zoom in to some of the more congressional district challenges, we see Congressman Dan Crenshaw was elected, I believe, after the 18 midterms. Seemed to have a very promising and maybe still potentially promising future in the House, but maybe has aggravated some in the GOP for one reason or another. But it actually, I believe I saw this earlier, like just a couple hours ago, that Ted Cruz endorsed the challenger to Dan Crenshaw, which was
Brandon Herrera, I believe,
correct.
the
Yeah,
gun guy, which is
Herrera.
that's very striking. Absolutely, Crenshaw's someone who, I'd contrast him with the Lindsey Graham, who, similar to Crenshaw, seen as a hawk, someone who's consistently supported things like funding for Ukraine, NATO, generally supported more aggressive actions in the Middle East, you name it. And yet, Graham has been pretty effective, nimble at navigating the second administration. Someone who, when it comes to getting things across the line in the Senate, I think has played some sort of role, even to the point of with Arctic frost and the push that he's had to be able to collect damages potentially from the government related to that surveillance. He's gone it alone, and yet at the same time, he has not been attacked to the extent one might expect for that. But Crenshaw, by contrast, all of the baggage that has begun to surround him, I guess that's enough. I think, along with the fact that he has not been as vocal as some in supporting the president, that's enough to potentially sink him in the modern GOP. Just to share an anecdote, it was striking to me at a conference a few months ago. This was one with a group of, generally speaking, conservative, Trump-critical voices. And Crenshaw was one of the people there, one of the speakers, which, in some states, in some races, there might be a lane for that. But in a place like Texas, up against Herrera, who very nearly defeated him in the last cycle, that's maybe a lot more challenging, a tightrope that's pretty hard to walk.
Sometimes in politics, when it comes down, if you're only won by a small percentage in the last election and if you're running the same play, it's almost like a sports team where you defeat the team the week prior, but they were injured or something like that. But now the team's at full strength, and now you're running the same playbook. It's going to be it's a troublesome outcome you're potentially facing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just wanted to touch up on that. I thought it was quite bizarre and telling that Cruz hasn't made an endorsement in the Senate race, at least as of when we started this broadcast, but went against Dan Crenshaw in the House race. So
another striking one to me, the Attorney General candidate Chip Roy, who in the past has pretty strongly attacked Ken Paxton, he also declined to make an endorsement when I put it to him in the House. So a lot of people are tiptoeing around that one.
Some of these races are just going to. That's why we're having this conversation. Is that it's worth for the awoken to actually hear what's going on. Okay, let's the next House race, and really the member more or less. Okay, we actually have a couple of comments to read. So at ZCVXS, Texas will be blue in November. And at Will Haynes TV 4944 says, how can the Dems utilize Beto's game plan from 2020 for the 2026 corn-in race? Do you think there's an avenue for Dems to utilize Beto's past efforts?
And I should just correct myself before we get into that, because there's some interesting questions and comments. The race that Crenshaw is in, he's facing Steve Toth, and Brandon Herrera is the opponent of Tony Gonzalez, the border district congressman who we're examining now. But that's it's going to be, to me, kind of fascinating to see exactly how the Beto playbook, if it's something that they've been able to kind of refine in this cycle, maybe through, I think, both the funding and the fact that, as I said previously, you're having more of an explicitly Christian pitch. Now, if you wanted to have a really strong candidate, he would be someone not from Austin, not someone who has that association across the state. If I were a Democrat recruiting somebody who could potentially win in a Senate race, I would try to find somebody from, I don't know, Lubbock or East Texas, also maybe a Latino candidate or someone who just generally is not seen as, I think, representative of a very liberal culture that's not really representative of most of Texas, which is what you get in Austin. But yeah, I don't know if Texas will be blue in this upcoming election. It might be bluer than some Republicans would like, but especially with the redistricting, I think we're going to see nothing too far outside of the expectations that people have.
I think it's a very fair analysis there. But back to Mr. Gonzalez, this was something that a couple days ago, maybe even at the beginning of last week, if not late last week, saw these bombshell, and really sometimes on the show we'll joke about, but this is not a laughing matter at all. This is a pretty serious, resulted in the death of a young woman through a pretty horrible method of suicide, and yeah, just not a great look for the congressman at all. We see he has said it's maybe trying to take something out of the president's playbook with maybe not a witch hunt, but like it's all of a sudden it's coming out because of the campaign, the election is on the horizon.
There was some coverage of this a few months ago. I should say it's gotten renewed scrutiny in the past few days. There's been additional reporting delving into it, but this was not a new story. On the other hand, it didn't really take off a few months ago when it was first surfacing.
Yeah, that's why. I guess there wasn't an election within the next couple of days. But yeah, a very serious. Like weren't in the Senate before. There's obviously the ethics committee. There's other methods like no office relationships, even from staffer to staffer, for example. Like you just don't want to. It's a Pandora's box once you open something like that.
I believe it. It's again one of these situations where, and I should issue a more fulsome correction because I believe it was Brandon Herrera who, in the previous election against Tony Gonzalez, not against Crenshaw, again to repeat, but against Gonzalez, he did very well. He only narrowly lost. So we are looking at a much better environment for that candidate. And on the other hand, Gonzalez, Troy Nels again the other day, he's not said that he should drop out, but he's essentially said, and I'm paraphrasing, that Gonzalez should, do what he thinks is best or something to that effect. So we're not looking at the sort of support that I think Gonzalez would like after these revelations, after these details have become more public. And again, it's really hard to examine it. And I'll be cautious here. Say allegations, accusations, but if there is truth to this, it's very, very hard to look at this and come away feeling comfortable.
Yeah, it's just something anybody reading this, I just imagine just like any everyday American would be like, what's going on here? This is a little outrageous. Something has to be some kind of consequence from this up to a point.
And looking at the redistricting, I imagine it might even be the environment in which you can look at a candidate like Tony Gonzalez, and the GOP establishment would be more comfortable with him not being their standard bearer. As I said, it's not totally new. There's new details, new reporting, but this stuff has been circulating for a while in some Texas media.
Yeah, you mentioned the comment from that one member expressing that Mr. Gonzalez should do what's best for him. But we've seen some prominent members of the more populist, or like Lauren Boebert, Massey, Anna Paulina Luna, and I believe Tim Burchett maybe as well. A couple of those more well-known fellows within the GOP conference have called for Mr. Gonzalez to remove himself from the conference. Yeah, a lot of wild stuff going on with this. So we just felt that this was definitely worthy including in the show. Another member that is also under some alleged accusations of misconduct and unethical and even corruption, to that matter. This gentleman in particular, it's a little different because he's actually angered some establishment Dems. I believe he was, I think he at least was or still is pro-life, one of the only Dems left in the caucus that holds that viewpoint. And as well, he was the only House member on the Democratic side to vote for the Save America Act, the House version of it that passed last week, 2 weeks ago. So he is, but he's been around since I think '02, maybe even before. But he's been around a while. So but he was pardoned by the president, which I think maybe made some heads turn with that. Like, why would the GOP and incumbent president let the hook off of a Democrat? Maybe that he's trying to unseat for the midterms.
Absolutely. I think that the fact that he has that record as a moderate, it's much like the case of Jared Golden. Different circumstances. Jared Golden does not have any corruption, indictment, nothing of that sort surrounding him. But in general, we're seeing Democrats, even in cases where they might think, oh, well, we need to get this seat on our side. So even if this person doesn't vote with us every single time, we'd still rather have a D there than an R. Democrats, I think, influenced by the more progressive wing, they've just been more averse to supporting people like that. And so, yes, you have in the case of Waylar, I believe the Republican that he will almost certainly face is this judge, this local in, I believe it is Webb County, if I'm not mistaken, who is a known quantity, someone who has that name recognition. And again, there's nothing equivalent to the sort of contest that we're seeing elsewhere, like with Don Davis's seat in North Carolina. We're having a lot of Republicans seeking the opportunity to challenge him. Whereas, yes, in this part of Texas, as we were discussing earlier, I think some of the issues of cartel activity, some of the violence that's been associated with the border and the border policies we saw under President Biden, that might influence alongside whatever else we may be seeing from this state amidst redistricting that could drive things in a more Republican direction. And with Waylar as someone in a very tough spot, I do wonder the fact that he is the nominee. Perhaps there's no stronger candidate that would have been facing the Republican choice in that case. So it's sort of interesting to consider, to speculate a bit on what we've seen in relation to him, and then what we could and will perhaps likely see once this comes down to the general election.
And Waylar, and I believe his district was one of the 5 that was severely altered through the redistricting push. So Waylar was already kind of
on the bubble, so to speak.
But yeah, Waylar he has the corruption stuff going on, but he does have that moderate record. He can show, hey, I will support the Save America Act. I can cross over where nobody else in my caucus may do the same. So it's going to be, we'll definitely keep a close eagle eye on this race for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be worth tracking, and certainly in the lame duck period, assuming he's not reelected and assuming we don't have something else happen when it comes to this district between now and election day, I do wonder what he might be saying about his party or just politics in general in Washington. I think if you want to look beneath the hood, maybe he's uniquely positioned to offer some of that perspective.